Hi there. This will be a little bit of a review or maybe an introduction to using methods when you program. This is just going to be a program to fill arrays and print them. And so I've set up 3 integer arrays. The first is called nums1, the second nums2, and the third nums3. And they're just going to be an array of 5 integers because I didn't want to make them too big because then you'd be watching me just type in numbers, which is not a good use of time. So we want to fill and print each array. So I could write the code for the first array and then copy and paste it for the second and third array, and that would work fine. But whenever you find yourself doing repetitive things, oftentimes that means you should be using a loop, but it also perhaps means you should be using a method. So methods are chunks of code to solve a particular task. We basically have 2 array tasks we want to do. We want to fill an array and print an array. And so even if we weren't going to use these 3 times, it's still a good idea to break your programming into tasks so you can test as you complete each task. So even if I were only to fill and print 1 array, I would still think in terms of, okay, the first thing I have to make sure I do is fill the array. And the second thing I have to do is make sure I print the array. And so I would still be programming in terms of tasks, and therefore I would use methods. I'm adding in the other 2 lists to show you that the added benefit you get from methods is that they're reusable. So you can use it for more than 1 array. So we're going to have something here. I'm going to call my first method fill array. I'm going to leave that blank for a moment. And my second method will be called print array. And again, I'm going to leave the parameter area or the argument area blank. So I'll come down here and I'll just write public static void. Now, what you've seen before is public static void main because it was the main method. So now we're writing our own method. Void means that it just executes code, that it won't return any value. We'll get to those in the next part when I talk about return methods. But here, I need the name of the array, so I'm going to write fill array because that's the name of my first array. So this is the method heading. Excuse me, you'll always have a parameter section. Most of the time it will be used. I suppose there's occasions where it won't be used. For us, we're going to be accepting a full array. So I have to define what that array is going to be named and what the type is. I could use the same name. Well, I'm not going to use the same name here because it's going to be used for 3 different arrays. So you want to pick sort of a generic name. So within this method, whatever array comes in, I'm going to just have it be known as array, or maybe num array. Or, yeah, num array. This is saying that I'll be receiving an array of numbers that are integers. Okay, and so what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up a scanner to have the user type in numbers, and I'm going to call it input. Scanner. Yeah. Scanner input equals new scanner. System.in means it's coming from the keyboard. Okay. I'm not sure if I can use the name scanner. I'm not sure if I can use the name input. Maybe I can. Scanner. Let's write keyboard. Okay. I guess it's fine. I'm not sure what that's for. What am I forgetting? Looks okay to me. Okay. Now I know that I want 10 numbers. So I'm going to set up a for loop. 0 less than 10. That will give me 10 values. And I'll increment. And sys out. Oops. Enter number. If I wanted to say enter number 1, enter number 2, I'm going to use the loop variable. And I have to add 1 to it because the loop variable starts at 0, and I don't want to say enter number 0. I want to say enter number 1. It's going to be x plus 1. And now I'm going to start filling the array. So the name of my array in here is called numarray. So numarray sub x is going to get the value of the next integer. I need keyboard dot next int, and I think that should execute. I don't need to do anything else in this array. So we'll see if it executes. We won't be able to see it until we print it. My program won't run as long as I have print array trying to be called because it doesn't exist yet. So I'm going to comment that out. I also have to send it nums1. So the method is expecting an array, and inside the method, that array is going to be called numarray. So the first time I fill an array, I want to fill nums1. So I have to send nums1 into that method for it to get filled. So I'm going to go ahead and run it to see if I made any mistakes. Enter number 1, 4. So it's doing what I expect, except out of bounds. Oh, because I tried to go to 10 and my array only goes to 5. So I have to switch this to 5. This is why we test before we go to the next thing, before we go to the next task, because if I hadn't realized that this should have been 5 because I decided on an array of 5, then I'd have that lingering error and possibly new errors from the new array. So it's really important and such a good strategy to perform the one task, test it. Don't go on to programming the next task until you see that this one runs without error. Oops, and I got an error because I typed in a letter instead of a number. So I will do it one more time because 3 times a charm. There. Nothing else happens and my program ran without error. So it's printing the array, it's filling the array fine. Now I want it to print the array. I am going to, put a comment here so I know what this is the end of fill array. That helps me see where I am. So now I want a void method for printing the array. Print, and I think I'll call it the same thing. So I'm just going to go ahead and copy all this. Okay. So again, I'm going to, I can just copy that too. Copy. Okay. And I'm going to have a sys out. I'm using Eclipse right now. When you're using Eclipse and you type sys out, you can then hit Control space and it will finish that for you. And I think before I print it, I'm going to say here, I'm going to put a sys out again, here is the array. I could make one that more specific, like array number 1, array number 2, but then I'd have to send in another argument. So for now, I'm just going to say, here's the array. So we need to print num array sub x, and I'm going to have a tab between the numbers. So again, I finished my second task. I'm going to print it. I'm going to run it. So 2, 5. Oh, and it didn't run the second method because I forgot to take off the comment. So one more time the charm. What did I do this time? I forgot to send in the argument. Nums1. Try again. So you're seeing firsthand why it's important to test as you go. So hopefully this time, there. And I used the tab key. See, it's not exactly what I wanted. I used the tab key, but I'm not seeing it because I used a println here. So I'm going to take this away so it's just print. And then after the for loop's done, I'm going to have a print line to finish the line. So here's what I got. I typed correctly, Miss McDonald. Okay, so now it prints out the array as I envisioned. So I have that working for my first array, and I actually have it working for my other 2 arrays. I just simply need to do this 2 more times for my other 2 arrays. 2, 3, 3, run. Try not to make any typing errors. Okay, so if I make that bigger, you can see that it receives and prints each array. If I did want it, no, I'm not going to go that far. So that's the value of arrays, of methods. If you wanted to, you could fill them all at once. So I could put it in a row. Whoops. So delete that, hit enter, enter, delete. Oops. Delete. So I could run it in this order too. Do all my input at once and all my output at once. But that kind of shows you the value of methods. Now, the reason I chose arrays to show you this is because if these were regular variables and I wanted to fill them this way, when you play with a variable here, you can't send the value back. In other words, if this were just a number and I sent it in here and I had it being entered, when it came back here, it wouldn't remember the number. But because arrays are objects and the way they're stored in memory is different, when you alter an array in a different method, the changes to it are permanent, so to say. They get remembered from method to method. So even though when I'm sending these arrays to 2 different methods, the changes that happen actually happen to the storage in memory, so you can keep manipulating them like that. But I hope that gives an okay